They ruled heaven, earth, and the underworld until history decided to pretend they never existed. Before Zeus, before Yahweh, before the fathers of the gods, there were mothers. And they didn't bow to anyone. This is the story of the goddesses who built civilization, and how men rewrote their legends. Welcome back to Pantheon. Myths in Minutes, where forgotten myths get their second life. Hit subscribe. The old queens of heaven deserve to be remembered. Long before the Olympians or the Norse gods, humanity worshipped her asterisk. Archaeologists call it the Goddess Age, a period stretching back tens of thousands of years. Across Mesopotamia, ancient Europe, Anatolia, and the Indus Valley, nearly every temple, idol, and ritual we've uncovered revolved around one central, powerful force, the divine feminine. In Sumer, she was Inanna, the glorious goddess of love, war, and political power. She was the one who descended into the underworld, faced her sister, the queen of the dead, and returned victorious. In Canaan, she was a Nata warrior, so fierce she single-handedly tore down Mo, the god of death, to save her brother Baal. And in Egypt, she was Isis, who tirelessly gathered the dismembered pieces of her murdered husband, Osiris, and literally resurrected him. The original resurrection story, thousands of years before any other. These goddesses weren't side characters or consorts. They were the main event. Creation, destruction, fertility, war, just as every fundamental aspect of existence flowed directly through them. They were the source, the power, the beginning, and the end. But then, something started to change. As small city-states began to merge into sprawling, centralized empires, a new kind of god appeared on the scene, one with a beard, a scepter, and a throne. And as this new model of power took hold, the old myths were rewritten, line by line, to reflect the new hierarchy. The brilliant Inanna was gradually diminished into Ishtar, stripped of her ultimate authority, and demoted to a beautiful, but often volatile, goddess of love and carnal desire, symbol of temptation. The mighty warrior Anot, who had defeated death itself, was later recoded as a mere angel, downgraded from a creator and destroyer to a simple messenger. Isis, perhaps too popular to erase completely, was absorbed into emerging religions. Her symbols were corrupted. Her iconic wings, once a sign of her magical power, were turned into the halos of saints. Her throne, a symbol of her legitimate rule, became a crown of stars for a new queen of heaven. Even the oldest goddess of them all, Tiamat, the primordial mother of creation in Babylonian myth, was recast as a monstrous, chaotic dragon. The new chief god, Marduk, slays her in an epic battle and uses her corpse to form heaven and earth. Suddenly, the very act of creation, once a maternal power, now belonged to a man. Sound familiar? This mythic pattern perfectly mirrors history. As patriarchal kingdoms rose to power, the divine feminine was systematically sidelined, renamed, demoted, or demonized. This wasn't just a shift in theology. It was political propaganda written into the very fabric of myth. But what did these goddesses truly represent? It's a mistake to think they were just simple fertility icons, only concerned with harvests and babies. They represented something far more profound, cosmic balance. They embodied both creation and destruction, fierce compassion and righteous fury. Inanna could launch a devastating war and broker a lasting peace in the same breath. Isis was both a nurturing healer and a master sorceress whose magic could bend reality. Anot was fiercely nurturing to her followers but utterly merciless to her enemies. They embodied wholeness, not just goodness. They were complex, powerful, and sometimes unpredictable. And that's precisely what made them dangerous to the New World Order. Male-dominated societies feared the idea of a power that couldn't be easily categorized or controlled. So, they split it. The divine was fractured. Heaven and order became masculine. The earth and emotion became feminine. And everything sacred to women's tuition. Raw power, the cycle of life and death, was renamed chaos and pushed to the margins. But the myths, remember, buried deep inside the old stories, you can still hear their voices, echoing through the ages if you just know where to listen. Now, fast forward a few thousand years, look closely at the symbols and rituals that surround us today. You'll find their fingerprints everywhere. The Virgin Mary's iconic blue robe. It's often made with the same pigment, lapis lazuli, that was sacred to Inanna and her starry veil. The rosary, a tool for prayer and devotion. It's a direct descendant of ancient prayer beads used to invoke goddesses of fertility and protection. Even abstract concepts like divine compassion and unconditional love, that's Isis to the core. The idea of justice being a blind, impartial woman holding scales. That's the Greek goddess Themis, still judging quietly in the background of our courthouses. We didn't lose the goddesses. We just repackaged them, gave them new names, and filed off the serial numbers. When people talk about Mother Earth, they're invoking Gaia, whether they know it or not. Every culture still calls her by a different name. We just forgot that they're all echoes of the same powerful, ancient woman. But here's the most interesting part, they're coming back. Not as idols in stone temples, but in our culture. From best-selling mythological retellings like Circe, and Ariadne, that puts the heroines back at the center of their own stories, to vast online movements reclaiming divine femininity. The ancient goddesses are rising again. This isn't about religion, it's about remembrance. It's about a collective hunger for balance. We've seen what happens when power is pursued without compassion, when logic is elevated above intuition. The world feels broken, imbalanced. And that's exactly what these ancient myths warned us against thousands of years ago. Maybe the goddesses were never meant to rule forever. Maybe their stories weren't about eternal dominion. Maybe they just receded into the shadows so we could learn for ourselves what happens when we try to live without them. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to start listening to them again. The goddesses aren't gone, we're just waiting for us to stop pretending we never needed them in the first place. So, who's your favorite forgotten goddess? Drop her name and her story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Pantheon, Myths in Minutes, because history is filled with erased queens, and we're here to bring them back. Thanks for watching.